the pedagogy and philosophy behind the integrated arts method, IAM or IAM for short, which is my alternate experiential, integrated, conducive, and student-centered music and arts pedagogical method aimed at effective teaching for effective learning. Here is a brief overview of my presentation today. I will first tell you the motivation behind my dissertation, describe my doctoral research method, and define the 3 key principles behind IAM. Then, I will present support for IAM and its key principles and explain IAM pedagogy and IAM programs in context and in practice. I will explain applications and contributions of my work before concluding this presentation. I am a multi-artist in music, dance, and visual arts, which I was taught and taught myself from a young age. I have also taught music and arts, doing so in the ways that I found most effective in my own experience and education. Feedback from observing teachers, students, parents, administrators, and students themselves was not only positive, but enthusiastic. The consistency of this feedback convinced me and others that my methods work. Feeling the need to share them with other teachers and students, I had to find out how and why they worked, and to be able to explain the reasons clearly. That lifelong journey and my recent research have led me to this dissertation. My doctoral research was conducted from real-world practice to grounded theory, which was then used to define IAM pedagogy and to lay a foundation for future research, from grounded theory to improved practice. The real-world practical basis of this research was the 2 years over which IAM appeared to lead towards accelerated and interconnected development of music, dance, and visual arts skills within participants in 5 public schools. My doctoral research proposal was to find the underpinnings of how and why IAM and its programs might be achieving this. I will share some of my research and its implications today. Very briefly, I had the students for about 20 weekly hour-long sessions in which we sat together and each one told the group what they wanted to learn within the subject area. Then I matched each one with parts of the curriculum or repertoire. I made sure they felt good, and before they knew it, they started doing what they wanted to learn. Once they experienced that, their own desire helped them practice and perfect their education. It was much more complex in practice and required my careful attention, but it worked very well, so I analyzed it and came up with the following aspects about its underpinnings. The first is that students started doing something connected with their choice as soon as possible, but it also was toward a qualified goal. Some of them needed initial simplification to make the experience manageable, but the idea was to give them experiential immersion. Experiential immersion is an IAM principle which refers to engaging students in active physical experiences in goal-oriented group and individual settings with disciplined and creative exercises. Direct experience is aimed at physical encoding into the nervous system for a lasting cognitive bond with the experience. Second, students' experience was rich and multisensory as it would be in practical reality. That multisensory aspect made experiences more memorable by associations between the whole mind and body, and led partly to what I call synthesis of arts. Synthesis of arts refers to integrating more than one type of experience into the same knowledge schema or unit of interassociated knowledge involving a group of interoperating neurons. Third, I kept monitoring students' progress and as many relevant aspects of their individual learning environments as feasible. Student centering aligns teacher and learner goals so that students are motivated but not fearful. Those aspects make up a conducive atmosphere. Conducive atmosphere refers to sustaining optimal learning states in students during activities, that is, by eliciting positive emotions, by using methods and materials that are both manageable and stimulating, and by providing a personally relevant learning environment that nurtures physiological coherence in students. I realized that several aspects were combining to aim my method toward these 3 general underpinnings, which I call the IAM principles. The aspects are not independent of one another. Meeting goals using simplification and manageability certainly contributes to a conducive atmosphere, as does memorability in general. Nurturing the whole mind and body contributes to experiential immersion and a conducive atmosphere. And finally, student centering and intrinsic motivation help with experiential immersion. A pedagogical aspect may effectively follow multiple principles because they are all aimed at effective teaching for effective learning. They are effective because they leverage physiological, psychological, and emotional causes of learning to enhance teaching with recognition of how different students learn differently. Some of these pedagogical aspects are specific to music and arts subject areas, while others are not. I collected the aspects that can be generalized into what I call IAMpedagogy, in the hope that other researchers and educators will further apply and test it. However, to apply IAMpedagogy to other subject areas requires an understanding of how, why, and in what conditions it can be expected to work. I found some of this understanding in related research on accelerated learning, brain-based learning, cognitive load theory, neuroscience of learning, social-emotional learning, and music and arts pedagogy. I'm not an expert in all of these areas, but I researched them insofar as they are needed for explaining how, why, and under what conditions IAM works. This interdisciplinary combination of research areas contributes to corroborating and explaining my observed findings. The first area of support I will discuss is accelerated learning, a worldwide pedagogical movement which has been objectively and independently measured by different researchers to improve the speed and effectiveness of learning by various amounts, around, for example, 300%, as measured by Don Schuster, professor of psychology at Iowa State University. I cover several developers and practitioners of accelerated learning in Chapter 2 of the dissertation, including these four, who listed their principles and which I compared directly to IAM's key principles. I will flip through these comparisons quickly, but the bottom line in each case is that accelerated learning agrees in principle with IAM pedagogy. Though the principles and subject areas differ from one author to another, my analysis summarized by these diagrams shows that we are all exploiting similar underlying conditions for human learning. Hence, it stands to reason that IAM programs should yield results similar to accelerated learning, which in turn offers an explanation as to what I have observed in practice. The second area of support I discuss is brain-based learning, which stemmed from neurophysiological, cognitive, and psychological studies. Learners' brains search for meaning. Knowledge is given meaning through experience, and without intending this cause of learning, IAM's experiential immersion principle facilitates it. Learning engages the entire physiology in parallel, the focus and periphery, the conscious and subconscious, conceptual and spatial memory. These principles of brain-based learning agree with and suggest why synthesis of arts works, and they add support for experiential immersion as well. Emotions are critical to learning. Learners benefit from high challenge and low threat and consideration of their unique brains, all of which contribute to a conducive learning atmosphere. The third area of research, cognitive load theory, also supports IAM. Based on cognitive load theory, our working memory can operate on a limited amount of new information at a time, whereas long-term memory is less limited. Information is manageable if the new part of it that is not already connected to long-term memory fits into short-term memory. There are two ways of making new information manageable. One is to simplify it so that it fits into short-term memory. This is known as scaffolding and is embodied in IAM's simplification aspect. Another is to relate parts of it to long-term memory so that the remaining part fits in short-term memory. I call this IAM's memorability aspect. Its mnemonic nature helps students more quickly manage and retain more complex new material. So to summarize, cognitive load theory offers an explanation as to how IAM's simplification, memorability, and manageability aspects work to facilitate its conducive atmosphere and experiential immersion principles. Support also comes from research on the neuroscience of learning. Experiences in which we engage are encoded into our nervous system and the brain through the development of fiber connections, new neurological pathways, new electrochemical reactions in the whole brain-body system, and new meanings, memories, and associations between them. All of these expand knowledge schemas. In skill development, direct immersion into experience has the added benefit of expanding knowledge schemas to motor neurons and nerves within the muscles. This supports IAM's experiential principle. Integrating experiences by stimulating different senses facilitates multisensory encoding, which develops stronger and broader spread fiber connections in the brain's neural networks. Also, due to the associative nature of our brains, any one of the integrated stimuli activates the whole network in future. This supports IAM's synthesis of arts principle. A tension-free, low-threat atmosphere with positive feeling states facilitates better memory, focus, and creative problem-solving and healthy fiber connection development. This supports IAM's conducive atmosphere principle. Other aspects also support other IAM principles. We also see support of IAM in research on social-emotional learning, which provides information useful for creating and maintaining an emotionally conducive atmosphere for learning. This information is also useful for educators themselves in regulating their emotions for effective teaching and possibly also teaching students to regulate their emotions for optimal learning. Scientific and empirical research in social-emotional learning and related areas such as mindfulness support my third principle, that is a conducive and nurturing atmosphere for meaningful, effective, and enjoyable education. Finally, support for IAM is also seen in prior methods of music and arts pedagogy, which achieve experiential, enjoyable, and accelerated education through student-centered and multisensory experiences. These include Dalcroze, Orff, Kodai, Suzuki, and Moore, Kahn, Watson, Kushner, Stewart, and others, which are covered in the dissertation. In general terms, previous music pedagogical methods exhibit more similarities with my first and third key principles than with my second principle, synthesis of arts. Previous arts methods combine music and movement or music and visual arts, but not the way IAM integrates visual arts with music and movement in a structured ensemble setting toward a polished performance. I have overviewed IAM in theory, and now I will discuss it in context and in practice. The three IAM key principles imply a certain instructional attitude and mindset on the part of the educator for proper facilitation in practice. Student centering is a mindset which stems from the need for a conducive atmosphere. It can be facilitated by pedagogical attention to students' physical and mental mechanisms, the educator's behavior role modeling, and flexibility in instruction. Likewise, intrinsic motivation, relaxed alertness, giving students choices, cooperating in setting group goals, carefully designed opening and closing sharing circles, eliciting positive emotions, calming or invigorating students' minds and bodies as needed, and setting of active mental and verbal intentions for positive achievements are other aspects implied by the conducive atmosphere principle and supporting literature. The experiential immersion principle can be facilitated by simplification and manageability where needed, by student-centered memorability and challenge where appropriate. The key principles can be facilitated by IAM programs like the Rhythm and Drumming program, using its sample music repertoire in Appendix B, and the Integrated Arts program, in which music is combined with visual art and movement activities. These IAM programs involve interdisciplinary activities, including mainly percussion ensemble work on an intercultural repertoire, leading to performance experience. The IAM educator's attitude is one of collaboration with students to identify optimal, individualized, and natural learning paths toward achieving well-prepared, expressive, and accurate performance of all chosen pieces. Students are given specific instrument choice and a choice of pieces with memorable features and flexibility in their parts to enable simplification, and challenge. These aspects exemplify IAM's experiential immersion in a conducive atmosphere. Integration of related arts and multisensory learning are also strongly grounded in scientific and pedagogical theory. They embody IAM's synthesis of arts principle. For example, the technique of introducing waltz dance simultaneously with waltz music creates a broader and deeper conscious and subconscious knowledge schema than either waltz dance or music in isolation. Their integration helps students with either inclination, dance or music, by fusing every student's knowledge schemas of both arts. In my professional pedagogical experience, in all cases, pedagogical objectives of IAM programs were achieved in prescribed timeframes and students enjoyed the process. Further results observed by myself and participants themselves include improvement in self-esteem, self-control under pressure, cooperative thinking, social behavior, and communication skills. The dissertation's applications and contributions can be categorized along two dimensions. One ranges from theoretical to practical and the other from general to specific. This leads to 4 quadrants of implications: mutual interdisciplinary collaboration, practical application to general education, education research implication, and improved practice. My personal observations and conclusions led to additional areas of application within these quadrants. For Quadrant 2, I see potential neuroscience studies of effects of IAM on students and teachers. These would be to further IAM's contribution towards improving individual teacher or learner skills and their own emotional and physiological well-being during teaching and learning. In Quadrant 4, there is a contribution to music and arts performance education, applying specific programs and their materials to a wide variety of facilities, creative or skill-based subject areas, and their synthesis in participant groups or individuals. In Quadrant 4, I also contribute a compositional style for music education, which holds pedagogical value of collaboration between composers, teachers, and students. In conclusion, 3 key principles were proposed and grounded on research studies in neurology, physiology, psychology, sociology, and pedagogy to explain observations of pedagogical effectiveness in real-world IAM programs. This dissertation defines IAM pedagogy and further illustrates how it is embodied by IAM programs. These programs and their parameters and materials are offered as concrete support and demonstration of IAM pedagogy applied to music and integrated arts education. The reasoning and background motivations for pedagogical choices supported by this dissertation hold potential for more enjoyable, effective, high quality, and stress-free teaching and learning in integrated arts specifically and in education generally. Thank you.